I'm going to introduce Wyomie Robertson, who's a mother of 3, who has personally experienced different maternity models and is passionate about emotional, mental health in birthing. She's keen to assist the development of continuity of care models for all birthing women, including learning from other countries, and wants women to feel prepared and supported holistically, ensuring the best mental and emotional health outcomes for herself, baby, and other children. Please welcome Wyomie. And the lovely Lexi. It's very tricky, and I don't want you to get distracted by how to teach you.
Hi everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Wyomie Robertson, and this is Lexi. I just wanted you to introduce this beautiful little thing, and now I'll pass her on. I'm the mother of 3 children. I'm very blessed that they're well and healthy. I'm talking today because my cultural background is that my mother is Sri Lankan and my father is Scottish and of Aboriginal descent. And we're from Larrakia, which is Darwin area in the Northern Territory. So I was fortunate enough for Lexi's birth to have be involved in the Narama service, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. So I guess the reason I'm here today is to talk about that as a consumer, but also the 3 births I experienced were all quite different. So fortunately or unfortunately, I got to experience all types of care. So the first, my baby I went through the birth centre, and which was great. I had the same midwife prenatally, and of course she came into the birth. But given it was so long, she had to leave at the end of her time, which you guys would be familiar with. And I ended up going into the birth suite for an epidural, and then following the fetal distress, a emergency cesarean. So that birth, I believed I went in being skilled, but given the outcomes, I felt that was quite traumatic personally. And I suffered major anxiety for at least 2 months after that birth. So having dealt with that personally, I developed a program for women to mentally and emotionally prepare and debrief after birth. For my second birth, I had her in the birth suite, and that was because I had her as a VBAC, so kicked out, as you like, of the birth centre, being high risk, of course. So I felt supported by the midwives and obstetrician at that time to have her as a VBAC, and that was successful. However, I was very physically restrained in that birth because of the monitors at the time. They were connected. So I attribute that to sort of really losing control of my mind and needing an epidural again for that. Luckily, there weren't any other complications I had from her birth. I also experienced a lot of fear in that birth too, given that it was a VBAC, and I felt like even though the hospital said it was okay, I really had to depend on myself to really be prepared for that. And then the third, lovely Lexi over here, I was supported by the Narama midwives who were wonderful, were able to build a very quick rapport with me and a sense of trust. I already knew them from the community, from different events that they'd gone to, like NAIDOC Day and other just community events, so I was familiar with who they were. Also, the Aboriginal health worker that worked in that team was really useful. Again, just made me feel comfortable and relaxed. They had a clinic at Wyomie, which I found really great in terms of just physical access. So instead of having to slog into Hurston with my other children and pay for parking and waiting for quite a while in the waiting room, Wyomie was just so easy for me, and it was drop-in, which was perfect, no appointments. The only, I was just going to say, Narama was fantastic, but at the time, which has now changed, I wasn't able to have the midwife in the birth with me, and so I actually begged Amy if she could please, please, please come to the birth with me. She wasn't able to, of course, so that led me to really have to go and seek individually some skills, birth skills for myself, physical birth skills, as well as that sort of internal pain management stuff. So I felt like my third birth was I'm going to try and have a crack at this again with all of the personal goals that I had for it. So I don't know if you've heard of it, but I use the Pink Kit resource, which is an internal pain management. It's basically a set of skills. Lexi's birth, I have to say, I'm very proud of and felt incredibly empowered for. Sorry, I didn't feel emotional then. Following that birth, even though the midwives couldn't be there, they did drop in, when I was in labour and also after, so it was really nice to see a familiar face as well. Unfortunately, after our birth, however, we contracted one of those more regular cases of strep A at the moment, you may have heard. So we ended up with toxic shock syndrome, Lexi and I both, and we were hospitalised. We stayed in there for 3 weeks, IV antibiotics. So we were separated for 3 weeks, on and off. So I was able to use those birth skills, actually, that mental stuff, throughout that period. So you can imagine it was hell and back, but somehow I was determined, and I'm breastfeeding her. I managed to do that with the support of all the midwives, I have to say, at the Royal. As soon as I said, that I wanted to feed her, I felt like there was this endless support for me to be able to do that. From hand expressing in ICU to, breast pumps and wheeling me down from the wardsman in the middle of the night, So I feel really good about that. So just to finish up, here is, I guess, some suggestions in terms of the continuity of care given my experiences. One is to have an advocate for particularly the beginning of birth, if you're wanting to have a VBAC. So I'm lucky I was assertive and very determined, but I did have the obstetricians rock up when I was in early labour and basically did say, now's the opportunity, shall we go and have a Caesar or not, And she actually went out to make a call, and I begged my midwife at the time, please, I'll be laying on my back, give me a chance, I just need a chance, So she said, go on, I'll buy you 20 minutes. And off I went to the stairs, up and down, up and down. And I never saw her again because I didn't need it, But for a woman who wasn't assertive, that could have ended in a different way. Having the midwives at birth, which I now believe that they can. Oh, sorry, I think I might have done that. A big thing is having emotional and mental support after births for mum and dad, particularly in that period where there are complications if mum is separated from from the baby afterwards. I didn't actually have anybody, the midwives came and saw me, but I didn't actually have a professional in that area at any time come and see, are you okay, what's going on? Birth skills, education of birth skills, that physical birth skills about a woman's body, I think is really vital as well. Cultural education, specifically for birthing through the Narama Centre. And I think that's it. And the key, I guess, with all of this that I found is that, and I've done a lot of research nationally, internationally, is that regardless of a woman's experience and outcome of birth, if they're given access within 24 hours to debrief with someone else about their birth, the rates for not only postnatal depression, but post-traumatic stress disorder decrease hugely. So to have somebody there, come and see them, let them debrief, takes an hour fine, 2 hours fine, be validated and acknowledged for what they have experienced. There's going to be better outcomes for her and for Bubby, and then to be able to bring in any services from there. So thank you very much for having me.